Kia ora, good morning everyone, Richard here, welcome back to the channel. Today we are looking at this lens. This is the Thypoch Simera 35mm f1.4. You may not have heard of the company Thypoch before because it is a relatively new company. But if you are a filmmaker, then you probably would have heard of their sister company Distortion. Distortion has released a number of really high quality cinema lenses in the last few years at pretty reasonable price. It seems the company want Distortion to focus on cine lenses and have Thypoch to focus more on the lenses for photography. And if you have been following me for a very long time, back in 2016, I did a review of a curly 35mm f1.2 lens on my blog, and it was the fastest 35mm lens for DSLR camera. Curly is also another brand from the same company, but it seems they are not using that brand anymore. But anyway, I still have a sample of that lens with me and I still shoot with that lens from time to time. The price of this lens is $699, so it is not exactly cheap, especially for a lens from a company that is not really well known. So we will see whether it's worth the money or not in this review. Before we start, I want to tell you this lens sample for this review was sent to me by Thypoch. I need to return the lens after the review, but as usual, no matter I need to return the sample or not, everything in this review are completely my fault, and I also did not receive any money from Thypoch for this review. I just want to make sure everything is clear before we start. This Thypoch Simera 35 1.4 is a full frame lens and it is available in Leica M as well as Nikon Z, Sony E, Canon RF and Fujifilm X. I have requested Thypoch to send me the Leica M version because I want to test it on both a Sony a7CR and a Lumix S9 using dumb adapters. This Thypoch lens is a relatively small full frame 35mm f1.4 lens, but it's not the smallest Leica M mount 35 1.4. For example, I had a Voigtlander 35 f1.4 a few years ago, and that lens is quite a bit smaller than this lens. But still, the relatively small size of this lens make it potentially a good choice to use with a small mirrorless full frame camera. Then you can get a pretty compact setup, but it still has the large f1.4 maximum aperture. The construction of this lens is full metal and it feels really nice. A lot of lenses from Chinese manufacturers these days are also made of metal, but there is a big difference between a really well-built metal lens like this Simera and some other cheaper Chinese lenses. For example, all the text and markings on the lens are engraved, not just printed. The aperture ring feels really nice as well. 3 clicks per stop from f1.4 to f4, then 2 clicks per stop from f4 to f5.6, and after that it is 1 click per stop. One really cool thing about this lens is that there are some red dots here on the lens that is between the aperture ring and the focus ring. And this is the depth of field scale that tells us at what distance things will be in focus with the current aperture and focus setting. Usually lenses use lines to indicate the depth of field scale, so these red dots on this Thypoch lens does the same thing, but it just looks more fancy. But this is not a brand new invention. Visifocus, or whatever you should pronounce it, was invented back in 1950s. However, I haven't seen any modern lenses that use this design. Yeah, it is kind of a gimmick, but I like it. The focus ring is really smooth. It feels very satisfying when you turn it. The Leica M version of this lens is also rangefinder coupled. Because of the Leica M camera's rangefinder design, Leica M lenses can usually only focus down to 0.7 meter. There is a soft click at 0.7 meter to stop you when focus reach that distance. You could keep rotate the focus ring and you can focus even closer. I will talk more about close-up shooting performance in the next section. The soft click at 0.7mm is only for the Leica M version. The mirrorless version of this lens for other mounts don't have this soft click at 0.7mm. One little problem with the soft click is that it makes focus adjustment between 0.7mm and the minimum focus distance a little bit hard, as there isn't too much travel, and once you get close to 0.7mm, it will quite easily snap to 0.7mm. So it is a bit hard if you want to focus close to but not exactly at 0.7mm. At the exact opposite end of the focus range, there is also a bit of extra resistance at approximately 5m mark. So if you turn the focus ring slowly, it will stop at 5m mark. You can apply extra force and turn the focus ring to infinity. So why the pause at 5m? Hyperfocal distance. If you shoot at FA and set the focus at 5m, then everything from 5m to infinity would be in focus. So 5m is the hyperfocal distance. But not only that, everything as close as around 3m would also be in focus. So for example, if you're doing street photography and you don't want to do any manual focusing, then you can just set the aperture to FA and set the focus distance at 5m, then everything will be in focus as long as your subject is not closer than 3m. Here is a set of photos that I shot with the focus set to 5m and aperture is from maximum f1.4, and then I stopped down the lens all the way to the minimum aperture f16. You can see once I stop down to around f8, even my focus is set at 5m, far away objects are all in focus. Actually, even the photo shot at f5.6, all the far away objects are pretty much in focus as well. So that pause at 5m make it easy if you want to rely on hyperfocal distance to have your subject in focus. For the Leica M mount version, there is an infinity lock on the focus ring that will lock the focus at infinity setting automatically once the focus ring reaches infinity. And you have to press the little button to unlock it from the infinity setting. The mirrorless camera version for the Z, E, X and RF mount don't have this infinity lock. Instead, those versions have a focus tab. Frankly, I'm not a big fan of the infinity lock. There's already hard stop at infinity focus anyway, and the focus throw is quite short, just around 90 degrees. I just find the infinity lock quite often slow me down and not giving me much benefit. But maybe I'm missing something, so if there is a good reason to have the infinity lock or you really like it, I would like to hear your reasons. The Leica M version doesn't have the 6-bit encoding. The lens comes with a beautiful lens hood that has a cutout at the corner so it doesn't block the view if you are shooting with a Leica rangefinder camera. With my sample, I noticed the lens hood is a little bit tilted if I turn it all the way when I install it, and it seems sometimes I would rotate the lens hood a little bit by accident. I've talked to Thypoch and asked them about this, and they told me this is an issue with the earlier production version sample that I received for review. They said they have already made some improvement to the lens hood since then, so if you have a latest version, maybe let me know if your copy has this issue or not. Okay, now let's have a look at the image sharpness. I'm doing the image sharpness test using a 61MP A7CR, so it is a really demanding test. At the maximum aperture f1.4, the center is slightly soft and I see a bit of color fringing. But if you are shooting with a lower resolution 20 to 30MP camera, then I think the result would look pretty good. Stopping down to f2 would improve the center sharpness dramatically. Even with my 61MP test photo, it still looks very good. Center sharpness remains excellent until we reach f11, then diffraction starting to soften the image. Let's have a look at the corner now. At f1.4, the corner is really quite soft. I will need to stop down to around f4, then the corner sharpness becomes decent. Focusing at the corner or focusing at the center of the photo make no difference to both the center and corner sharpness, which suggests the lens has very minimal field curvature. The minimum focus distance of this lens is 0.45 meter. Just remember the lens has a soft click at 0.7mm for the Leica M mount version, so you need to push it past the soft click, then you can reach the 0.45m minimum focus distance. When shooting at the minimum focus distance, the image is a bit soft at f1.4, stopping down to f2 would make some noticeable improvement. One thing I really like about this dipod lens is the bokeh rendering. Have a look at this set of photos I shot from wide open f1.4 to f5.6. The dissolved background is really nice no matter at wide open or when I stop down the lens a bit. But the reason I like it is not that the bokeh is super smooth or super soft. I like it because the bokeh has quite a bit of character. Look at this photo. You can see a bit of highlight at the edge of some of the bokeh balls. Or look at this photo. You can see a bit of cat's eye effect. This altogether adds a bit of character to the photo and make the photos shot at large aperture look a bit like oil painting. When shooting at f1.4, there is some pretty strong vignetting, very noticeable in this test photo. And I also see the vignetting in my real-world photos as well. Stopping down the lens to f2, f2.8 would reduce the amount of vignetting, but even at f2.8, vignetting is still quite noticeable. And the amount of vignetting doesn't seem to change even if I stop down the lens further. Chromatic aberration control is not bad. While I do see a bit of color fringing in some of my very high contrast photos, the amount is, I think, very acceptable, and the photos has to be really high contrast for the color fringing to be noticeable. My local test photo shows small amount of chromatic aberration. So overall, while I can see some color fringing, I won't really complain too much about this lens chromatic aberration performance. The lens has a bit of barrel distortion. Not too bad when you are shooting real-world photos, but it can be quite noticeable if you're shooting a brick wall. In terms of lens flare performance, this dipod lens is alright. I can see a bit of lens flare when shooting into a bright light source, but the amount is not terrible. The contrast remains pretty good as well. I feel some of you may actually like that small amount of lens flare, adds a bit of character to the photos that shot with this lens without really ruining anything. Stopping down the lens to around f4 and we can start to see sunstars in the photo. At f5.6, the sunstars are already pretty nice and sharp. As you further stop down the lens, the sunstars becoming sharper and sharper. I really like the 14-point sunstars rendered by this lens. I think they are beautiful. Focus breathing is very noticeable if you look at my usual 1m to 20m focus breathing test. You can see the zoom effect pretty easily in this focus breathing test. Actually, I don't even need to do a focus breathing test like this. I noticed the focus breathing quite often as well when I was adjusting the focus distance. Since the lens also doesn't have a really large focus throw, just around 90 degrees, so I really don't think this lens is great for video filming, unless you don't need to change focus in the middle of the scene. Apart from the infinity log, I really like pretty much everything that Thypoch has done in terms of construction and design of this lens. It is a really beautiful lens. It may not be exactly Leica quality, but it's pretty much as good as any of the best third-party lenses in the market. It is easily as good as a Voigtlander or Zeiss lens in terms of construction. And yes, the red dots for the depth of field scale is a bit of gimmick. Some of you would probably say why they did it. It doesn't really make the lens easier to use, but I love it. I love it when company put in some extra effort and try to do something a little bit different, instead of just following what everyone else is doing. In terms of image quality, if you are someone who wants perfect image quality, like maximum sharpness, no vignetting, no distortion at all, then no, this 35mm Thypoch Simera is not for you. This lens has quite a few flaws. Nothing major, but still, this is not a lens aiming for technical perfection. To me, the reason to buy this lens is to enjoy photography. enjoy the shooting experience, enjoy the very solid build quality, enjoy looking at those red dots on the lens body, and appreciate the character of this lens. The small imperfection makes the photo captured by this lens looks a bit more like oil painting than what you get from a photocopier. In terms of price, for almost $700 US, it's not going to win any Best Bang for Bucks award. But if you're someone who values the shooting experience and photography to you is more about the artistic result rather than technical perfection, then this Thypoch Simera 35 f1.4, maybe it's just the lens for you.